Okay, let's begin. Ladies and gentlemen of Hult University, my name is Andrew Kosztyó, and my call to action message to you all this morning is that your resume needs work. I'll stop and let you think about that for a moment. I was going to start by saying your resume doesn't work, but that seemed a little bit harsh. Though I would imagine that for some of the people in this room, that statement is also true. And I'll illustrate that point by asking a question. According to recruiters and headhunters, how many resumes do you think are received for a post-MBA six-figure job at a global institution? You know, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, how many would you guess?
2 dozen.
2 dozen? How many would you guess?
5,000.
5,000, okay. So we have a lower and an upper limit. Any other guesses? Oh, you guys are all executive MBAs, right? So
Yep.
Someone in this room has probably hired an MBA in the last year. Anyone hired an MBA in the last year? No one? Okay, so 2 dozen, 5,000.
150 in the last job that we
150. Okay. You're probably closest. The surveys of recruiters and headhunters say that the average post-MBA six-figure job gets about 300 resumes. Now, for the companies that we all actually want to work for, Google and Nestle and Siemens and HSBC and McKinsey, all the usual global suspects, they get about, to your point, they get about 1,000. They get about 1,000 openings, resumes for each opening. And then for the really slick jobs, my employer, JP Morgan Investment Bank, recently posted a job for their M&A group, Mergers and Acquisition Group. And that posting internally, it didn't even go out to the headhunter community, got 10,000 resumes, 10,000 resumes for an M&A job. So my question to you is, who in this room thinks that the resume is competitive with 300 other resumes, 1,000 other resumes, 5,000 other resumes, 10,000 other resumes? If you think it's competitive, you can leave now. If it's not, you're in good shape, because in the next 2 hours, you'll have the tools to make it competitive. So right now, if your non-Hult resume, the Hult, as you know, has an excellent template that you're all using for the resume portals and so forth, your Hult job search. But if your non-Hult resume looks something kind of like this right now, in the next 2 hours, you're going to have the skill set to make it look a little bit more refined, something more like that. And that's particularly important because, MBAs are expensive. They're a lot of hard work. A lot of you are giving up salary to be here. A lot of you have traveled very far to be here, rent expenses, et cetera, and you're spending a lot of late nights, and you're making a lot of effort. So you're going to all this effort, spending all this money, and then you're putting a resume out that looks like this, and all that work goes for nothing, because somebody who's worked half as hard as you, but wrote a nicer resume, is going to get the job. So I would argue that these next 2 hours are going to be among the most important that you spend at Hult. Though, of course, I have my own bias. So anyway, we can talk a little bit about my background. My career is in finance. In the early 90s, I worked in Hungary at a venture capital firm after the Berlin Wall came down. In the late 90s, early 2000s, I was the CFO, COO of an internet startup. I worked at a big data McKinsey spinoff, and I've had 3 separate stints at the JP Morgan Investment Bank. I'm currently there now, and I'm currently on the country risk desk, which is, we're managing the $389 billion of assets that the firm has outside the US and 152 other countries. So that's what I do for my day job. But my passion is resume writing and career coaching. So I've written resumes for hundreds of executives, some of the names you would recognize, but I can't share them with you. I've also given seminars to any number of institutions around the world, Boston, New York, Casablanca, also lectured at HALT Shanghai and so forth, and I'm delighted to be here today, especially to Magda and Nav, who invited me to be here. I also welcome Robert, who is, he's not here, but he was here a little bit earlier. Your husband. Yeah. Anyway, he'll be here shortly, no doubt. Here's a quick look at my resume. The first 2 pages are the actual resume, and then the last page is my sort of project page or deal sheet. But we'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. Let's talk about the agenda first. Again, we'll spend about 2 hours this morning. The first half hour, we're going to helicopter up and talk about the philosophy of resume writing. I'm calling it the seven secrets. The 7 secrets, oh gosh, let me go the right way. There we go. The 7 secrets of winning resumes. Then we're going to get very tactical and talk about the 10 building blocks of winning resumes. We'll then talk about the objective statement resume, which is a good format to use for your stretch jobs, the jobs that you're not that well qualified for, but you would like to apply for anyway. We'll have our break, then we'll talk about cover letters. We'll talk about your LinkedIn profile, which is increasingly important in this environment. If we have some time, we can do some exercises around frequently asked interview questions and strategies you can take to best answer them. And then we can do a little job search networking at the very end. If at any time during the seminar you have questions, please put up your hand to challenge me. I know that you have some resume writing experience. I'm very eager to have the challenges. I never leave a room like this where I also don't learn something from the class, so please speak up. I know that for some of you, English is a second language. I'm going to use a lot of sort of New York idioms and slang, so I'm doing that for a reason, because it's good to know that global slang. If there's anything that you don't understand, just put your hand up and say, please translate. Okay. Last thing I'll say before we get started is that this is not your standard writing course. Resume writing is as much of an art as it is a science, so we're going to bring a lot of different disciplines into this process. Cognitive science, informatics, how best to present information, how best to market yourself, psychology, how you get into the reader's heads, how best to use language and so forth. So the goal is your reader will know that the resume really works, but they really won't understand why, because we're getting at all these sort of gears at the back of their head. But you will know why. Okay, last thing, anything that I have starred is a particularly important page, which you should pay attention to. That said, we can get started. Does anyone have any questions before we get started?
The rockstar and the Buddhist, I'm just very curious about.
I can't tell you. Well, the Buddhist guy was just a guy who was a Buddhist monk who said, I want to make some money. You know, I've seen the light. In the rock star, it's a name you'll know, but I can't tell you. But it's like he kind of washed out. He was a one-hit wonder. And then he went to Wharton and then went into business. So you can Google that. That's enough to find out the name.
Maybe we can mention also the UTI session after.
Yes. Last thing is this afternoon. There we are. Upstairs in the Shanghai area, in front of the Shanghai classroom, where the gray and green sofas are, I'll be doing office hours for as long as you guys are interested in talking to me. I'll talk to you all for about 10 minutes for your individual resume, so if you'd like to stop by. So I'll be in the green and gray couches, or I'll be in front of that, that common computer area. So just come and we can spend another 10 minutes. So unless we have more questions, let's get to our 7 secrets of winning resumes. I'll go through each of these in turn, of course, but just to start, your resume has to be malleable, has to be theme-focused, it has to have a career summary section, it has to be accomplishment-oriented, that's very important. It should be deductive in its presentation, it needs to be 2 full pages, and it needs to be marketing-focused versus auditing-focused. So again, we'll do each of these in turn. What do I mean by malleable? Well, the bad news is maybe before the Great Recession, you would have one version of your resume that you would email to the world. Now, for the jobs that really interest you, you have to tweak them a little bit. Each one has to be tweaked. And the good news is the templates that I'm going to share with you will allow you to do that pretty readily. Now this, as you see, this is a starred comment. This is important. Your resume needs to be theme focused because there's only so much a reader can absorb when they're looking at your resume. It only gets a couple of seconds. We'll talk about that in a minute. So if you can at least convey to them what kind of company you want to work at, where do you want to work, and what your core competencies are. If you can get that into the reader's head, then you've accomplished about as much as you can accomplish in the time allotted to you. So 3 themes. What I suggest that people do is give your resume to somebody who's not really in your line of work. You know, like I said, your dentist or a pharmacist, you know, a smart person. Have them look at your resume and then ask them, what kind of company do I want to work at? Where do I want to work, and what are my core competencies? If they can't answer those questions, so a clever civilian, if they can't look at your page and answer those questions, you have to continue to refine your document. The best way to present your 3 themes is by using the career summary section. Again, this is another starred element, which is particularly important. It allows you to beat the 7-second rule. Does anyone want to make a guess what the 7-second rule might be?
Yeah, it is the time you read the summary and you recognize what is this.
Exactly, exactly. I just said in the last slide you should give them 30 seconds to read your resume and absorb it. No one spends 30 seconds on your resume. Eye scanning technology. So when they use eye scanning technology to watch how much time people spend, it's about 7 seconds. So you only have 7 seconds to capture their attention. So you want to do that at the career summary at the top of the page. Okay, the career summary at the top of your page will have 3 components. It'll have a headline, it'll have a theme statement, and then you'll talk about your core competencies. And we'll go through each of these in turn. So here's what it should more or less look like. So again, we have a specific headline. We have a little theme statement, which introduces your 3 themes, and call it a thesis statement if you'd like. And then your core competencies, 6 of them in 2 groups of 3. Okay, let's go through each of the items. So for the sample headlines, you can see, you know, we're not saying something like experienced manager or experienced professional. We're being pretty specific. We're saying, you know, business development vice presidents or strategic development professional, system administration manager. So right at the top of the page, we're letting the reader know that the resume meets the job description that they're looking for. So how do you tweak your resume? Make sure that your headline matches the job description of what they're seeking. Then we get to the theme statement. So again, the 3 themes of your resume are where do you want to work, at what kind of company do you want to work, and what are your core competencies. So if we look at, for example, if we look at this theme statement at the bottom, we can see the person wants to work in investment banks, and he wants to work in global financial centers, London, Hong Kong, New York. And what does he do? Systems, applications, et cetera, et cetera. So in those 3 lines, he's introduced where he wants to work, what kind of company he wants to work at, and, you know, what he wants to do. So let's look at the top one. So for the first bullet point, what kind of company does he want to work for?
Fortune 500.
Fortune 500. Okay, simple as that. Okay, where does he want to work? US based. Yeah, it's not as specific as it could be, but you know, he wants to be in the States. And then what does he want to do? Yeah. So there it is, right on the top. And then the middle one, you can see it as well. So again, right at the top of the page, tell them what they need to know. So this theme statement, can anyone tell me what's wrong with it?
Too long.
It's too long. No one's going to read 6 lines. What is that, 6 lines? No one ever reads more than 3 lines or scans more than 3 lines. What else is wrong with it? He talks about small companies and large companies. He talks about consulting, he talks about broker-dealers, brokerage firms, high profiles. He's throwing all the spaghetti against the wall. He's telling them too much. Instead, he should pick what the job description is looking for and narrow the theme statement down accordingly. And again, this was a $300,000 a year guy who thought he could get away with it. Anyway, now we're going to talk about some of the core competencies. Again, you can see they're fairly specific: market intelligence, collection and analysis, data mining and problem solution, new product creation, introduction. So the core competencies that you speak to are as specific as possible, and they also relate to the job description core competencies that they're looking for. You're not going to cut and paste them, but you're going to make sure that they're very similar. Okay, you should make your core competencies and your theme statement and your headline, as I've been saying, as specific as possible to beat subjective validation. Now, no one really knows what that is, but it's a really important term to use or to understand. Well, the best way to explain subjective validation is to think about your astrological sign. So if I said whatever astrological sign you are, I said Pisces are passionate and intelligent and creative. You're like, yeah, wow, that's me. Astrology works. And if you're Scorpio and I said Scorpios are passionate, intelligent, and creative, you're like, yeah, yeah, that sounds like me. The same thing on your resume. If on your resume you say I'm passionate and intelligent, creative, all 300, 1,000, 5,000 resumes are going to say they're passionate, intelligent, and creative. So, and ergo, you've wasted all your time. So say something that's going to speak to you as an individual and not to everybody who's applying for the job. Subjective validation. Okay, number 4, and this is also a particularly important item, your resume has to be accomplishment-oriented. That's already highlighted in the HALT template, but I can't stress enough that you can't just talk about your job and your resume. You have to talk about how you achieved distinction within that job. So for example, overly simplistic approach, but if you were a baker in the old days, prior to the Great Recession, you might say, I bake breads, I bake cake, I bake pies. Now, post-Great Recession, you might say, my bread won the blue ribbon, my cakes generate the most margin, my pies grew the fastest. So he's not saying what he does, he's saying how he distinguished himself, which also, of course, speaks to what he does. Okay, when you're talking about your accomplishments, be sure to talk about them as dramatically as possible. So don't say grew sales from 24 to 57,000, not that interesting. Say grew at 138%, which is saying the same thing, but a lot more interesting. Instead of adding 2 new clients, added 2 major banks. Instead of cut costs by 1%, cut costs by 1.7 million. So not only do you have to speak to your accomplishments, but you have to speak to your accomplishments in a very compelling manner. Okay, so this is a part of one of my templates, and you can see that this individual has done exactly that. So what looks good to you about this first bullet point? What sort of jumps out at you? I'm hopeful that you can. It's a little bit hard to read. What ought to jump out at you is he talks about Harvard University, Inc. magazine, United Way. So he's talking about his clients. They're clients that the reader would know. That's going to jump off the page. And then the next bullet, he talks about client cost savings of 22%. And then in this case, the guy was doing this while I was at grad school. And he made enough money to finance his expenses. So he puts catchy bullet points in there, which you're going to remember and which are going to be compelling to the reader. Okay, number 5, yes?
Before we go to this,
of course.
Point, because I think many of the MBA students, they want to change their career path. So
right.
I think they don't have so many achievements.
Well, if you didn't have accomplishments, you wouldn't have been accepted to Holt. You have done things prior to Holt which were at least enough to get you into this school. You have prior work experience, right?
Yes.
And again, it was good experience, or you wouldn't have been here, or you would have been fired during the Great Recession.
But for example, if the students, before they are engineers, but now they want to do the consultancy or some other industry things, how to do this, how to manage this?
Right. One thing we're going to talk about in a few minutes is the objective statement resume. But even in engineering, you might have worked on cost savings projects. You might have worked at efficiency projects, which play into the P&L and the bottom line of the company. So what you have to think about is, what did I do in engineering that relates to the world of business? In your HALT application, you probably talked about what I did, which relates to business. So that's the kind of thing you want to put on your resume.
I think it is the angle you look into the achievement, rather than looking into the achievement from engineering point of view, look into the same achievement, but from sales point of view.
Exactly.
And marketing.
Exactly. So we'll go back to this slide.
The wording.
Yeah, try to think about how you can twist your experience into something that would be interesting to the reader. Now, we're not joking here. That's not always easy. But you try to do it as best you can. And at the very least, put a number in the bullet point, put a client name in the bullet point, and it will look impressive. Versus just saying managed complicated processes, back to subjective validation. Does that make sense? Okay. And again, we will talk about the objective statement resume in just a minute. Okay, so now we'll talk about the deductive approach to your resume writing. A lot of people just mix together their company, their job description, their company. It all just sort of goes together, and it's hard to digest. Yes?
Will you be able to take a copy of the presentation?
Yeah, Magda's going to post it to the portal.
It will be on my HALT, the same announcement which you have registered from. I will place the document there.
Yeah.
Not worried about taking it.
No,
Yeah.
no.
Yes, so everyone.
No, this will be on the portal, and I would encourage you to save it and review it later. Okay, so what I suggest individuals to do is talk about the company first, then talk just one sentence about the job, and then, most importantly, talk about your accomplishments. So look at something like this. So here, the guy introduces his company, and no one really would have heard of this company. So he says it's a top 50 private company. It serves Fortune 500 clients. So show that the company is in someone's dining room table, and then just one line what he did. Everyone knows what the vice president of business development does. No big deal, but say it anyway. And then in the bullet points, talk about your accomplishments. So let's for example, let's keep harping on the accomplishments. What's effective about either of these two bullet points? What jumps out at you when you look at these bullet points? What jumps out at me, the guy worked at American Express, he worked at Citigroup. Those are names that everyone recognizes. They don't put the low-performing guy on the American Express account. And then the board of directors gave him a project. That should jump off the page. And then the project that they gave him, he reduced closure time, whatever that is, by 45 days. So that's the kind of thing that's the kind of language that's going to capture the attention of the reader. But again, company, job description, accomplishments. Okay, number 6, your resume has to be 2 full pages. Your HALT template is 2 full pages, and I recommend you continue to do that. 1 page makes you look inexperienced, and 3 pages, 7 seconds, just won't be read. If you have to do a 3rd page, kind of like I did, do a deal sheet or a project sheet. I'll show you that in just a second. So again, this is an example, sort of notable transactions. This guy was an investment banker, and sometimes when you apply for investment banking jobs, they want to see your deal sheet, projects that you've done recently. So he has last summer, the summer before that, some detail on some big projects. But that's the 3rd page of the resume that they'll read after they're interested. Okay, your 2-page resume needs 2 sections. Obviously experience, everyone knows that, and education, obvious enough again. Put experience first and education second. HALT might have it differently because this is your student resume, but as soon as you leave HALT, education goes to the bottom of the page. It's all about what you've done for me lately in business. And then this might be a little bit new for you. I like to add what I call an icebreaker section, and that's the section that sort of helps you get around subjective validation. It's a section that tells the reader a little bit about yourself. So You might do affiliations, you might do community service, or visa status, whatever makes you professional recognitions, whatever makes you interesting, that should be in a separate section. A lot of times people just put hobbies, reading, travel, and running. Well, everyone does that, who cares? Versus if you say you have a pilot's license, or you were a champion athlete at undergraduate university, champion athlete, they get up in the morning, they work hard, they have discipline, plus it's interesting, they'll remember you. So experience, education, and then an icebreaker section. So we can look at a quick example. This guy is the trustee of the X collection. It's actually the toy soldier collection. Brown University, the Ivy League university in Rhode Island, United States, has like 50,000 toy soldiers, the largest in the world. So this guy he's the trustee of the toy soldier collection, and 7 out of 10 people, when they see it, they're like, wow, toy soldiers, that's really interesting. And he'll say, yeah, 50,000 toy soldiers, there's a $1 million endowment, I'm in charge of managing the endowment. So he moves from something interesting into how he managed the endowment, and the 3 themes, the core competencies that he's trying to speak to. Because otherwise, we all know the sort of first 2 minutes of the interview where you sit down and you talk about the weather and you talk about the commute to get there, and it's like, because there's nothing else to talk about. If you have the toy soldier collection, they can jump right into it and talk about that, and they'll remember you. Again, everyone in this room speaks more than one world language. You should all flag your languages. And many of you have dual citizenships or visa status. You should certainly flag that on your document as well. Here's another affiliation section. This one's a little bit more detailed. This one, she was a volunteer consultant. After the 9/11 attacks, she helped small businesses get back on their feet in Lower Manhattan. And then again, you see she talks about her accomplishments that she achieved within that volunteer work. And she also interviews candidates at her grad school. So, that's something that will jump off the page to a reader. It's like, wow, if she's, if HBS trusts her to interview, she's probably pretty good at presenting herself. So those are 2 examples of the affiliation section. Does that make sense? Because it's a little bit different than you might have seen. Okay. Okay, so let's keep going. So number 7, last one, your resume has to be marketing focused and not auditing focused. I'll let you think about that for a second. Prior to the Great Recession, the general consensus was you just write what you did on the resume, and that was enough. Kind of like an income tax return or a balance sheet. Everything has to be accounted for. All my job, everything I did, put it all on the page. That's what a resume is doing. It's an inventory. That's totally wrong, especially now in the post-Great Recession environment. Your resume is a marketing document. So if you left consulting and went to a not-for-profit for 6 months because you thought you were going to change the world, and then you didn't like it, so you went back to consulting, you don't have to put the not-for-profit job on there. It just speed bumps people, confuses people. Leave it off. If you're in a finance position and you have a lot of engineering experience, you don't have to put all your engineering experience, just a little bit, and showcase your business. Whatever you did in engineering, showcase that. Don't put the engineering stuff that's not interesting for the reader. I'm sorry, you have a question? Looked like you might. No. Oh, I thought you were, okay, got it. I thought I saw a little bit. Okay, all right. So again, it really is okay to drop experiences that don't interest the reader for a particular job description. Okay, so that was the 7 sort of high-level philosophy behind your resume. Does anyone have any questions before we move on? Anything? Yes?
Okay, so I have a question. In most CVs, you put the period that you worked for a certain company,
yes,
or, bunch of companies. So if we do drop an experience because we think it's not relevant,
yep,
then what if it shows a time gap of, let's say, a year or 2 years? Is that okay to do an interview? Or
as long as you can explain it. You can also, I'm not your priest or your rabbi, you could also fib. I'm not suggesting that, but if it was only a year, you could fib. Now, I'm not suggesting that. but just have a good answer. And my clients tell me that, especially now, if you have a year break between 2007 and 2008, everyone knows it was a great recession. Everyone was out of work. They're not going to hold that against you. So have a good answer ready. But certainly, so I guess the best answer to that question is balance if it's a really weird job, it wasn't professional, say you, I don't know, some strange volunteer work, and it's just not going to speak to the reader. It's probably better to leave that off and leave a hole in the document. And then when they say, well, what did you do for a year? Say, well, you know, it was the Great Recession, it was 2008, I did some project work, I volunteered at a not-for-profit, et cetera, and then move on. A couple of sentences and then just move on. Quick answer. But again, everybody in this room is kind of lucky because any period between 2007 and last year, you get a free pass because of the Great Recession. People expect that there might be a hole or two in your document. Does that make sense? Did I answer your question? Okay. So let's talk about the 10 building blocks of writing your resume. So again, we were 50,000 feet. Now we're going to drill down into the boring stuff. But it's important to know nonetheless. So first thing, and you know this is really boring, correctly format the file of your resume. One of the things that headhunters and recruiters speak to is that, you know, they have a lot of job openings. They get all these hundreds of resumes, 300, 5,000. They're all coming in. And they see these files and they don't know what file to put them. It's hard to sort them all. So name them correctly. So, you know, last name, first name, the job that you're up for, and then, you know, what kind of file it is so they can file it accordingly. A lot of headhunters are working from their dining room table and don't have the latest technology. So when possible, don't save it as a docx, which they might not have on their computer. Save it as a doc file, a Word doc file. Because if they can't open it, they're not going to send you an email, please resend it. They're just going to delete it. They have 299 other ones to look at. Be aware of the fact that there are pluses and minuses for the different formats. You basically have PDF, doc, and RTF, rich text format. PDF is great because it can't be changed, but it sometimes doesn't print as well as it might. Plus, it can't be scanned. So if you're sending it to, you know, Goldman Sachs, their scanning technology can't scan to see if you went to Halt. If they're looking for a candidate who went to Halt, they're not going to be able to pick that up if you send them a PDF. Doc and RTF generally print better, but sometimes when you email them, like when I email RTF, rich text format resumes, to people who are on a MAT platform, sometimes they don't open well. And then when you email doc files, sometimes there's still email distortion. So what I suggest is just say in your little introduction, attached, please find my resume in PDF and doc. You know, don't hesitate to send one or two different versions of your file. So like when I was sending this presentation to Magda, I sent it to her in PDF and PowerPoint, just so I knew she could open it without having to email me again. Okay, this is pretty obvious, but we'll go through it quickly. Your margins should be about 1 inch on the top and bottom, left and right about 3/4 of an inch. I like to put a little page box around the page. You can kind of, okay. 1 second. Okay, here we go. So I like to put a little page box around the page. I think that makes it look nice. I like to block justify the text, meaning on the right margin, there's a straight line. And this is something that you should all make a mental note of. If you're applying for a job in the States and you think that the resume might be printed out, format it as letter paper size. If you're in the States and applying for a job overseas, format it as metric paper size. So when the person prints it, it prints on the right size paper. Just a small point. On the rare occasions you do print your resume, I suggest not white, which is 95%, not cream, which is most of the rest, but a very, very light blue. If you go to a paper supplier, you can get a very, very light blue, and you'll be the only person on the pile that's light blue. So it'd be another little way to distinguish yourself. The other thing, the latest trend in resumes now, believe it or not, is to send your resume through the mail. So who has hired someone in this room in the last year or so? Okay, so how many resumes did you get in the mail?
All online. All of them.
All online, okay. Was there an option to send them to you in the mail, or?
No,
Okay.
because we have a very system.
So it was a database. It was a database. But if someone had gone to your LinkedIn profile and somehow tracked you down, saw the name of your company, your name, care of this company, sent you the resume, you would have probably got it, and it would have been the only one you got. And you probably, how many pieces of mail do you get? 2 pieces a week?
Hardly,
Yeah. I might get 1 piece of mail a month to my desk. So if someone sent me a resume, say, oh, wow, this is a piece of mail. I'm having fun. I'm going to open this up and look at it. 10 years ago, you get 300 resumes in the mail. Now you get 1 or 2. So yeah, sure, apply online and send the email, but drop it in the mail. The worst that can happen is they drop it in the garbage can.
And if there is a phone number, just call the person.
Yep. Call the person, call the person's secretary, assistant, get the address. Simple as that. Okay. Use the best font. I recommend a font that's sans serif, meaning without the curly cues. The sans serif font was developed at the beginning of the computer age. The Helvetica was invented so that it could read better on the computer. And 90% of all resumes are looked at on the computer screen for the first time. So use a font without the curly cues. My favorite fonts are Soutane, which you can find and download, or Arial Narrow. I like them both because they're kind of compact, but they don't look too compact. There are some fonts that really pack it in, but they look a little bit cramped. So those are my 2 favorite. Whatever you do, don't use the default fonts. So for a PC, it's Times New Roman, and for the Mac platform, it's Lucinda Grande. Don't use those, because everyone uses those. You want to use something a little bit distinctive. And of course, never use a gimmicky font. It just doesn't look professional. That's obvious. Okay, yes?
I mean, just pointing out here, but I think it's not a good idea to use a downloaded font, because if you send the word out, if the Word document, if you send it out, it could... Yeah,
it might have distortion. Yes, yeah. There might be distortions. Yes, exactly. So if you don't have Soutane on your computer and you download it, you might want to email it to a friend or something to make sure it's okay. Or save it as a PDF.
Yeah, save it as a PDF.
Yeah, PDF. So when in doubt, send both versions. But it's perfectly okay to email it to I'll email it to someone on a Mac platform, like, hey, how did this open on your Mac? Does it look okay? They said yes, then I know it's all right to send. Because it really is funny. Different files open on different... I can't give you definitive answers. All I can say is experiment and then send multiple versions. Okay. Yeah, I guess that's all we need to say about font. This is something that I think is kind of interesting and something you might not get for all your resumes, and what most resumes don't contain. Put hyperlinks in the electronic version of your resume. So behind your name, put a link to your LinkedIn profile, your email address, so when they pull it up on their computer screen, they can put the cursor over it and just click on it and send you an email, versus saying, oh, here's the guy's email, I'm going to type it into my computer. And you just click and send an email. And then for anything, like if you work for a sexy startup company or so forth, behind that company's name, put a link to the company. And then you can just, obviously you're not going to have it underlined, it's not going to be in purple, you're not going to see it in the document, but you can just say in the letter, for more information about me or my prior employees, feel free to click through. So it's a nice way to allow the reader to do a little bit more due diligence without doing any work. Okay, effective formatting, we've talked a little bit about this, but when we're talking about font, use bold very carefully, only use it for the headings, only underline your sections, experience, education, your icebreaker section. You should only use black font, and use italics maybe once a page, maybe to introduce the company, to distinguish the company from what you did at the company, or maybe if there's a particularly important accomplishment, like use italics for that one sentence, but no more than once or twice a page. Okay, remember that most of your readers are going to be people more like my age as opposed to your age. So make it easy to read. Use a bigger font. So the biggest thing on the page should be your name. Your name should be 13 or 14. The headings, experience, your icebreaker section, etc. That should be 11 or 12. And then your text should be 10 or 11. And then subtext, you know, where you worked and the dates and any acronyms or whatnot, make that one smaller, so 9, 10. So name, headings, text, and subtext. So it's basically, again, the 7 seconds you get, it's telling the reader the big stuff's the important stuff, the small stuff you can just skim through.
So should we make the look of the resume very different, like with the very attractive colors and patterns, background, something?
No.
Just make it plain.
Make it plain but efficient. Plain but efficient. You're not applying as for a graphic artist job or a creative job. You're applying for consulting or banking or general management, and all, you know, you're getting 5 seconds. If you're making it too complicated, it's like, oh, look at all this. I've never seen this before. I don't know what to do with this.
Not complicated. Yeah. I mean, just to get the reader's attention.
They know what they're looking for. You have their attention. Get the reader's attention with your accomplishments.
Use a summary.
Yeah, get the reader's attention with a very effective career summary at the top of the page, which talks about your core competencies. Don't try to, because they know when you're trying to play with them. They know a gimmick when they see it. You know a gimmick when you see it, they know a gimmick when they see it. Remember, there's 300 of them. You know, you don't want yours to stick out because of the bad gimmick. So, does that make sense? Okay. Okay, here's something to remember. Your brain processes capital letters slower than it processes upper and lower case. So anything you really want to draw attention to, you capitalize. So obviously your name should be in capital letters. If you worked for very interesting, companies, oh, there it is. But didn't have interesting jobs, so you capitalize the company and then put the title in lowercase, upper and lowercase. If you had really interesting titles at no-name companies, then you capitalize the title. So you capitalize what you want them to pay attention to. Okay, yes?
Just a question. So that's not a sort of, you're not keeping consistency there, so...
It has to be consistent on the page. Yeah, so say if you worked at 3 companies. Say you were a managing director and a partner and a principal at 3 hedge funds that no one's heard of. So just put managing director, partner, and principal, and then hedge fund, hedge fund, hedge fund, in upper and lower case. If you work for Goldman Sachs and a no-name company, don't put Goldman Sachs in capitals and then no, that's an important question. Yeah, it has to be consistent. It goes back to the 7-second rule. There has to be an internal logic that the reader is understanding, even though they don't realize that they're understanding. It's like, okay, so the brain processes capital letters slower. It's like, okay, their eye is drawn to the capital letters. That's what's important. That's what's going to slow them down. So.
I was thinking sort of if they've done different jobs.
No. Yeah, it's all about maintaining the internal logic, so that 7 seconds, they go right down the page. They get it. It goes back to your question. If you put all these fancy design elements on, that it's too hard to understand the internal logic quickly. Okay. So back to numbers. I always say that a number on a resume is like a picture in a newspaper. A picture in a newspaper is worth 1,000 words. A number on a resume is worth 1,000 words. So a lot of your readers are going to be left-brain, numbers-oriented people, people in finance, people in consulting, and so forth. So even myself, when I look at a resume, I scan down from number to number. So, you know, eye scanning technology, you sort of go one number, next number, next number, next number. So just get them down the page by the numbers. Don't put big, just use capital K, capital M, capital B, and use odd numbers. If you use 100 million, you're going to like, well, that's a guess. Of course that's a guess. If you use 99 million or 103 million, that sounds precise. And what does that say? This person is a precise person. We like precise people. Rather than at the top of the page saying, I'm precise, instead, just put numbers like 1.27 billion, so it tells them you're precise without having to tell it. So, and that looks absolutely true, where 1 billion just looks like an easy guess. So we all know your 1.27 is still a guess. But there's no one that's saying that you can't estimate 1.27 versus 1 billion. Does that make sense? Okay, got it. Okay, keep your sentences very short, very simple. Don't use a lot of fancy grammar. Yes?
Just a question about the numbers. Would it be better, for example, if you want to write 800K, so it would be better to put 0.8 million? Or you put it 800K?
We'll put 800K, 800M, 800B because it allows them to get it quicker.
Okay. So 800K is better
Yeah.
than putting 0.8.
Yeah, because the number sticks out better. If you put 800 million, then it sort of gets lost in the million. If you did 800K, it's like, boom, there it is. It jumps out at you better.
No, I mean 800K or 0.8 million. Which one will
Oh, okay, I got it.
massive more?
Oh, I would say 800K. Yeah, 800K is bigger.
It's bigger.
800K is bigger. Yeah, good question. Yeah, yep, yep.
It's still not the full billion, so it's a kind of portion.
Yeah,
of
and
billion.
yeah, now point zero.
Message.
Yeah, it takes too long to process. It takes 0.8. Yeah. Again, you don't have time for that. Okay, so back to sentences. Very simple sentences. Don't use any clauses or whatnot. Occasionally, you can use hyphens to sort of set things up. So, tactical planning to deliver cost savings, performance enhancement, with an established. So you can set things off on occasion, but otherwise, keep your sentences very simple. Okay, this is kind of important and kind of interesting, I think. Our brains are programmed to process data in packets of 3. Nobody knows why, but we're wired for 3. So think about it. Ready, aim, fire, liberté, égalité, faith, hope, charity. Even where you don't have 3, like in real estate, location, 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 you still use 3. For some reason, we like 3. So we've already talked about the 3 themes of your resume. Your bullets can't be more than 3 lines. And you should, when we're putting packets of data, so cost savings, process improvement, and productivity, put 3 of them. If you put 2, it sounds a little skimpy. If you put 5, it gets lost. They're not going to read all 5. So always format your document in units of 3. And it's going to make a lot more sense to the reader, but they'll never understand that you're doing it, but it still will. Okay, now we're going to talk quickly about bullet points. So rhetoric rule of 3, how many bullet points do you think you should use? 3. Yeah. No less than 2, no more than 4, use 3. And how many lines should the bullet point be? Up to 3. Up to 3. Any more than 3 lines, they're not going to read. 1 line might be a little bit skimpy. So 1 to 3 lines each for the bullet point. If you're going to go to the second line, try to have at least a half a line. Don't just put 1 word on the second line because then you just waste the space on the page. And the most important bullet point should go first. The second most important bullet point should go last. And the least important one should be last in the middle. So start strong, end strong, and then put the least important thing in the middle. Okay, now for each bullet point, I've already sort of alluded to this, but I'm going to say it over and over and over again. I'll say it this afternoon during office hours. For each bullet point, you have to ask yourself 2 questions. Does it speak to the 3 themes of my document, where I want to work, what kind of company, what my core competencies are? Does it include some kind of a buzzword or a number? If you answer no to either of those questions, it shouldn't be a bullet point. Maybe you'll move it up a little bit to your job description, or better yet, just drop it altogether. Your bullet points have to have buzzwords, numbers, and it has to speak to the 3 themes of your resume. Okay, so we can look at some sample bullet points. One of the bullet points on of these 4 is less effective. Can anyone tell me the least effective bullet point? The second one. There's no number, and it really doesn't say anything. This should, if anything, this should be up under his job description. There's one other mistake on this bullet point. There's 1 line there. He should probably, now that he's on to the second line, he should probably dress it up a little bit, use some more language, or shorten it. You shouldn't have that one little odd thing at the end. But this one, as you can see, is very effective. 20 people, 200 plus institutions, nice little things that they, 759K a number that sort of jumps off the page, et cetera, et cetera. Again, annual revenue, 200% over projections. So, things that, again, will capture the reader's attention. Okay, now we're going to talk a little bit about power words. By that, I mean when you're writing your resume, you should start off each bullet point with a word that has some impact. Not just say, don't say managed, don't say led, say pioneered, say quarterbacked, say engineered. Never use personal pronouns. And take away the these and a's. You just don't need them. It disappears. So it allows you to eliminate some words to focus on what's important on the page. And then sometimes, once or twice a page, use like a really strong word, so a really strong accomplishment. Lead that off with a speed bump word, a really strong word. So instead of saying managed my company's first quality control program, say pioneered first ever quality control initiative. That's something that's, again, going to really be noticed. This page, you can see a lot of speed bump words, or almost see a lot of speed bump words. You can download it later and look at them, but a lot of words that you can just pick from this page to use on your resume, and the ones that I have highlighted are ones that are particularly strong. Okay, we're down to number 10. The 5 fatal flaws of resume writing. First and foremost, errors and typos. That's really important. So look at your resume, try to get rid of the typos. Sleep on it, look at the next morning. You're going to see 5 typos that you didn't see the night before. Look at it, sleep on it again, and then send it to your friends and say, could you look at my resume and see if there's any typos? What I do is I bribe my friends. It's like, if you find a typo, I will buy you a beverage. Well, in fact, what I did when I was a CFO, COO of this internet startup, I sent the business plan around to all my colleagues and I said, hey, guys, can you take the business plan home tonight and look for typos? Get back to me tomorrow morning. So the next morning I got 3 people gave me typos. That doesn't help. So the next night I said, can you take it home and look for typos? Take another crack at it, guys. I got maybe 2 more the next day. The next night I said, take the business plan home, find typos. Any typo you find, I will pay you $5 for. And I paid out almost $500, which was money well spent. If I had tried to get an editor to find typos, he would charge me a lot more than that. So bribe your friends to find you typos. Next one, fabrications and exaggerations. The reader will know when you're lying, so don't. If you say, I closed a deal when I was an analyst at, HSBC. No analyst closed deals at HSBC, so don't say you did. Now, for other exaggerations that you might be able to get away with, as I said to you, I'm not your priest. You may or may not want to do them, but don't make exaggerations or fibs in your resume unless you're a pathological liar. If you can sit at the desk and look and say, yes, I did something I didn't do, and not worry about it, then do it. Well, whatever. Caveat emptor. It's up to the reader to ask the questions. However, for just about everyone in this room, that's not going to work. And what it's going to do, it's going to make you nervous. It's going to disempower you. It's like, oh my God, I hope he doesn't ask about the thing that's the lie on my resume. So there's just one more thing to remember, to worry about as you go. And yes?
So where do you draw the line then between the fabrication and the buzzword? For example, baking a cake or pioneering some groundbreaking cake
it's
recipe?
threshold of pain. Threshold of pain. You push it to the point where it disempowers you. If you write pioneering, and you're like, sure, ask me. I'm going to if you ask me about pioneering, I'm going to talk for 2 minutes about the pioneering work I did. If you're like, boy, I really hope he doesn't ask me about pioneering because I can only speak for 1 or 2 sentences, then don't put it on your page. Your resume has to be an empowering document. Everything on that resume, you should be like, damn it, ask me. I dare you to ask me. Anything, please ask me because I'm going to wow you with anything that you dare to ask me. If that's not what you feel for your content, then it shouldn't be on the page. Simple as that. Okay, the next one is confidential information. A lot of you work for consultancies and so forth, and you work for these really great companies, but you can't use the name, so don't use the name. If you use your name for your prior company, your next employer thinks you're going to use the name. So what you can, like for example, I work with a lot of like McKinsey guys and Bain guys, and they'll work for Ford Motor Company, but they can't say Ford Motor Company. But what they can say is major global automotive manufacturer.
Maybe we mentioned the industry as well.
Yeah, so major global automobile manufacturer, or top 10 investment bank. So that's all they really care about, that you worked for a big important company or you had a client that was a big important company. The name doesn't really make much of a difference. So don't betray confidential information. When you're allowed to use it, use it. But when you're not allowed to use it, don't. Yes?
So regarding the, no sorry, you're going to get to it. So
no,
jumping
this is the next one, moonlighting? Yeah. Okay, so everyone know moonlighting job is a second job. I'm moonlighting right now. But I don't have my moonlighting job on my JP Morgan resume. And a lot of us moonlight. I bet a lot of you are doing little projects right now and so on and so forth. That shouldn't be on your resume because it basically says to the employer, if he moonlighted for his current employer, he's going to moonlight with me, and I prefer that he not. I want him 100% of the time. Does that answer your question?
Kind of. But what if the moonlighting actually
supports?
Yeah, thank you. It's like, supports your decision to move where you want to move.
Then I would make that very clear and say it was sort of a transitional opportunity to gain the experience to, get in this. Right now, the fact that you're all in school and might be doing little projects on the side, that's fine. Okay. But when you're 3 years into your next job and still doing moonlighting projects, you really shouldn't be transitioning. What you should probably do at some point is leave your current job, do your moonlighting job full time. So it's a little bit of a balance, but in general, it shouldn't be there. Does that make sense?
No, that's fine. It's just that because, there are people who say work at the desk, but then they have this hobby of becoming an engineer or pilot.
What I'm doing, yeah. So everyone, I bet, everyone who in this room has moonlighted before. A lot of people. You work on your novel, or your screenplay, or your art, or something. But in general, it should not be on your resume.
But when you do the transition in your career, then the moonlighting, which was your hobby and which you would like to move towards, would actually support your application.
In which case, your whole resume should be tweaked for moonlighting. So if you're in, say you're a brand manager, but you've been managing money on this side for friends and yourself, and now you want to go work for a money manager. You would write a money manager resume saying, these are the money management projects that I've worked on, and this is why I've distinguished myself as a money manager. Then sort of at the bottom of the page, it's like, oh yeah, I also work at Microsoft, But it would be a money manager resume, not a Microsoft resume. So that goes back to the tweaking. Does that make sense? It's an important point.
I'm not sure if it's a stupid question. What is moonlighting?
Oh, it's a side job, a second job. Okay. So I'm moonlighting as we speak.
Like for money or for passion?
Well, I'm doing it for passion. And a lot of people do. Like, you work at, IBM, but you write a screenplay. You work at McKinsey, but you like to play in the stock market. Those passion jobs or second jobs shouldn't necessarily be on your resume. At the point where you say, I'm tired of working for Nestle or IKEA, now I want to go manage money full time, then you write a money management resume and rebrand yourself as a money manager. And you can also focus on an objective statement resume, which we're going to talk to in just a minute. Okay, does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. The last thing I'll say is don't put anything negative on your resume. So, we've all come through the Great Recession. You might have been laid off. Your department might have been shuttered. The big company might have gone out of business. Don't put that on your resume. People don't like negativity. In fact, there was a study done. It was ostensibly a reading comprehension study. So they gave people a paragraph to read, and then they told them to walk down the hallway to pick up a candy bar to thank them for doing the study. So when the paragraph to read was about wrinkles and disease and retirement versus about something regular, agnostic, they would walk down the hallway slower to pick up their candy bar. And of course, they don't know they're doing it, but it's called priming. So if you put negativity on the page, you're priming the reader to feel negative and bad about himself, herself, and maybe bad about you. So keep it very, very positive. Yes, sir.
What about some crisis management? Like the customer have the major complaint on your product?
Oh yeah, but then you say, I managed a crisis management department which satisfied customer concerns 98% of the time. Yeah. Use words like satisfied, that achieved customer satisfaction 79%, that increased or decreased complaints by 27%. So you make it into something positive. But don't say, as company went bankrupt, I was tasked to manage the closure of the company and to fire all the employees. You know. Okay. So back to the objective statement resume. If you're trying to reinvent yourself from a consultant to a hedge fund manager, from an engineer to whatever you want to do, you will use an objective statement resume. A lot of, many people in this room are trying to reinvent themselves. Most of your career is going to be about reinvention. You've heard the statistic that most of us are going to have 2 or 3 careers throughout our business career. So when you're at that inflection point and you're trying to reinvent yourself, that's when objective statement resume can become very, very valuable. So what you do is at the top of the page, in your career summary page, rather than using the headline that we had before, we use an objective statement. So we say, for example, in this case, microfinance position, and then you talk about why you're good for it. Leveraging 8 years of quantifiable success in global banking, venture capital, project management in North America and Europe, and then something about the education and citizenships. So what you're saying is right at the top of the page, number one, you're in the right pile. Because again, the big challenge is like she gets in, it's like, is she looking for the microfinance position? Yeah, she is. There it is right at the top of the page. But more importantly, before the reader says, this woman has no microfinance experience, you're telling them, yeah, I do. Here it is. It's right here on top of the page, and here are the core competencies that I have, and these core competencies will sync to the core competencies that are in the job description. So right at the top of your page, you're telling them, I am qualified for this job, despite the fact, now it might be a little bit hard for you to see, but the woman's qualifications really don't match the job all that well. She was more or less an investment banker. But if you lead with why you're qualified, we're back to psychology here. Once you start reading down the page, then it seems a little bit more coherent. It seems to make some more sense. If you tell them why you're qualified and then put the qualifications on the rest of the page, you're doing the work for them. You're not making them try to imagine why you're qualified for this job. So it doesn't always work. Again, as we said at the top of the hour, there's a lot of competition. But if you want to transition and you want to try to reinvent yourself, this is just about the best way to do it. Just right at the top of the page, tell them what you want to do and why you're good at it, despite the fact it might not be obvious from the rest of the content. Does that make sense? Okay. Let's see here. And we have some sample objective statements. So for example, for this one, this person was a corporate drone, basically, working in a big company, doing a boring job, and they wanted to work for a startup. So what the person said is that they were a corporate entrepreneur. So within the company, they were doing projects that started businesses, started initiatives, and so forth. So they were an entrepreneur for 9 years. They did tactical planning and so forth. They initiated change, the kind of things that entrepreneurs do. So that was designed to sort of say, no, I'm not just a boring guy who works at Siemens. I'm a guy who within Siemens started projects, started initiatives, made differences. Similar to this one, this woman wanted to go into consulting, but she was actually in banking. So she basically said that within banking, I've been doing strategic project implementation projects, which syncs reasonably well with the consulting position. So again, right at the top of the page, what I want to do and why I'm qualified for it. Does that make sense? That's important because a lot of you are going to be using objective statement resumes when you're trying to reinvent yourself. And we all of us, you're going down the list of jobs. It's like this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, but it's not all that much fun. It's like, oh, well, here's a fun job at Disney, or this is what I really want to do. So write yourself an objective statement resume and give it a try. So that's our break. It's 11:15. We're in pretty good time. We can reconvene at 11:30, and then we have one more hour before prayers and class. Okay, why don't we get started again? Does anyone have any quick questions from the first, I guess it was first hour and a half? Anything that they thought about over the break, talk to your colleagues about, you want to get clarification on? Yes?
I've worked at a company for 6 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So, and during that period, you go through different positions and responsibilities, but they tend to overlap.
Mm-hmm.
So, would you recommend that a person, like, so say that from 2008 to 2009 you're at this position, and then from 2009 to 2011 you're at this position? Do you break that up per position and responsibilities, or do you just kind of like let it flow?
No, I would break it up because, again, it gives it more internal logic. So let me see if I can go all the way back to if you go back to my resume very quickly, which you probably, again, have a hard time seeing. Okay, here I am. So to that point, and again, I apologize, so it's JP Morgan. I was actually at JP Morgan 3 times. Once from 86 to 90, and then once from 2007 to 2009, and then now 2013 to current. So what I did, I have my first chunk of responsibility. What did I have there? Assistant Vice President, and then I have here Vice President. So I broke it up so they can get through the material a little quicker, and this is important, they can also see career progression from assistant vice president and to vice president, so increased responsibility. So yes, you should break it up, number one, to untangle it, make it easier to read, and to show increased responsibility and career progression.
But what if there was, what if your progression that you had just was like one extra thing, well, 2 to 3 extra things, you just include that in the new position and retain the old information, but you still do them in the previous job?
Well, yeah, you don't say things twice.
Correct. Okay.
You just put the additional added information. Yeah, if you say it twice, then it gets very boring. You want that's something I'm going to say in my next seminar. Don't repeat bullet points. Don't say managed, brand managed a product, brand managed a product, brand managed a product. Put the different experiences that speak best to that job description. Okay. And again, show progression and increased responsibility. That make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions before we get into something on the material? Okay. So now we're going to talk not so much about resumes, but cover letters, LinkedIn profile. We'll do some networking exercises, etc. So. Your cover letter is pretty simple. In fact, cover letters are kind of going out of fashion. A lot of people now don't even submit a cover letter. Most cover letters don't really get read. I think in 10 years it'll be more of a formality. It's almost a formality now, but it's a nice formality because it's a way to distinguish yourself. So if there's 300 resumes and 200 don't have cover letters, at least you'll be one of the 100 that does give a cover letter. And likewise, when you send the resume via email, you have to put some kind of introductory email. You can't just attach a resume to a blank email. So you have to have some sort of introduction. So what I suggest that people do is write a little cover letter, write the nice document, which you'll see in a second. So write a document that looks like that, and then just cut and paste the content into your introductory email. So you have, this will go into your introductory email. You'll attach the resume document, and then you'll attach the nice cover letter document. And as you can see, the resume and the cover letter have the same headings, they have the same borders, the same formatting. So if and when they actually get printed and put on the hiring manager's desk, they see a nice resume, they see a nice cover letter. It's a nice sort of marketing package that they have in front of them. So there still is a place for a cover letter in your job search. However, the cover letter doesn't have to be overly complicated. You're basically just trying to do three things. You're trying to let the reader know that you're in the right stack. Again, lots of jobs, lots of, so it's like, okay, this is a job I'm applying for, and this is the person who referred me to you. So you're trying to accomplish that. Then you're kind of introducing your three themes of your resume. So again, what kind of company do you want to work for? Where do you want to work, and what are your core competencies? You introduce those in the cover letter quickly. You use 2 or 3 bullet points to support those themes. And then most importantly, you tell them that you're going to follow up. So for those of you who have taken public speaking courses, and I'm sure that's probably most of you in this room, they give you the little trick. You tell people what you're going to tell them. You tell them, and then you tell them what you told them. That's what you're doing with your cover letter. Your cover letter is telling them what you're going to tell them. The top of your resume, the career summary, is telling them what your career themes are, your resume themes are, and then the rest of the content in the resume is just supporting those themes. So your cover letter is just a start of that process. So again, you can't see this very well, but again, Magda is going to distribute the templates a little bit later, but it basically just says, I'm looking for this job, and so-and-so referred me to you. I'm qualified for this job for these 3 reasons, and you're not off the hook. I'm going to call you, I'm going to email you, so don't think you're going to forget about me because I'm going to be in touch. And yeah, exactly. You can wimp out and say, please contact me if you have any questions, but that never works. It's much better to say, I'm going to contact you on Wednesday afternoon to answer any questions that you have. You probably won't speak to that person, but you're still telling them I'm going to be aggressive. So that's another way to set yourself apart from the other candidates. Okay, I wanted to say a few words about LinkedIn, because LinkedIn now is effectively your online resume. It's your online presence, your online professional presence. So for example, if you reach out to me in 6 months and say, hey, you know, I attended your seminar at HALT, and I'd like to ask you a question or two, or hire you, or refer you to my friends or something, first thing I'm going to do is go to your LinkedIn profile. It's like, oh, this woman's interesting, she's intelligent, she has good background. I'm going to answer her email. If I go to your LinkedIn profile and I don't see anything, and it's weak background, it's like, well, this woman didn't even spend the time to put up a LinkedIn profile, and she wants me to help her. She can't help herself, I'm not going to help her. So forgive me for using you as the example. But this is the first place people do their due diligence when they're evaluating you as a professional, not only for jobs, but other parts of your professional life. So if you're trying to sell something to somebody, they're going to go to your LinkedIn profile and say, what's this person's experience? Should I take their call? Should I listen to what they have to sell? So punchline, your LinkedIn profile is important. So to that effect, what you should do is take your career summary, take your experience, your icebreaker, take the content from your resume and cut it into your LinkedIn profile. So you've already done the work. Just take the content and put it into your profile. Put a nice picture up. So we were talking about pictures before. Put a professional picture in your LinkedIn profile, not a picture playing volleyball or football or something. Take 15 minutes and try to understand the functionality of LinkedIn, because there's a lot of free functionality on LinkedIn that most of us don't use. There's something called this Network Alumni tab. So you can go to this tab, you can do HALT University, you can pick years, you can pick countries, and find everyone who went to HALT, who works in your field, et cetera, and then contact them. So there's a lot of content that you should familiarize yourself with. You should update occasionally. Like if you all go to my LinkedIn profile later, you can see that I put an update that I'm going to be presenting at HALT today. And let's see, you have these groups and endorsements and so forth. I don't find them quite as helpful, where you like endorse people for management or marketing or something. I don't find that they're helpful, but sometimes I still click and endorse people anyway. When I go to a profile and I see that they have a lot of recommendations and they have a lot of people in their contact base, once you get north of 500, just 500 plus, that looks good to me. So you should try to get yourself about 500 people, and you should have people write you recommendations. So when I see lots of contacts and lots of recommendations, I will likely accept your request, because I get a lot of people I don't really know wanting to link to me. If they have 27 contacts, I'm not going to link to them. If they have 500 plus and they work for HSBC, I will. So now we've gotten through almost 2 hours, and I haven't done a 5P or a 3Bs or a 2Ts, but you're finally going to get one. Okay, so my 4 Cs of LinkedIn: make your profile complete, make it concise, make it current, and make it career-oriented. So don't, Facebook is one part of your life, LinkedIn is another part of your life. So keep it entirely professional. Does that make sense? Any questions about LinkedIn? Okay. Well, I'm not going to embarrass anybody. I presume everyone in this room has a reasonably current LinkedIn profile. Okay. Okay. Okay, so now we have the section I'm calling the frequently asked interview questions, or maybe more appropriately described, how to best answer questions in interviews. And people think that there's a trick to it, but it's actually very simple. Think about when you're watching a politician on television, and the politician is asked a question. Does he answer the question? No. He answers the question he wants to answer. He doesn't answer what he's asked. And the same is true with interviews. No matter what your interviewer asks you, all they really want to know is the 3 themes of your resume. What kind of company do you want to work for? Where do you want to work? And what are your core competencies? So whatever question they ask you, you answer through that filter. So if someone asks you something ridiculous like, what kind of tree would you like to be? Something stupid like that, you say, well, I'm really interested in making my career in the Middle East, and one of the iconic trees in the Middle East is the date palm, and I'm thinking about date palms, and they get by on very little resources, very little water, they're very independent, but yet they produce wonderful fruit, which is very sustaining for life in the region. And that reminds me of a project that I once did where I led this effort, and I didn't have a team behind me, and I produced results. So, answer in 1 or 2 sentences, but then talk about what you want to talk about, one of your projects or something that speaks to your 3 themes. If you get a question that kind of rattles you, if they say like, what kind of tree would you like to be? What you do is buy yourself some time. You ask a redirect question. So you could say, anything. Just ask anything to buy yourself some time. So what kind of tree would you like to be? It's like, well, a tree from the region or a tree anywhere in the world. Who cares? But while they're answering that question, you're putting something together in your head. You're like, okay, now how can I funnel this? How can I shoehorn this into my 3 themes? So when in doubt, ask a redirect question. And at the end of the answer, if you're making eye contact or they're not making eye contact, they don't quite get it, you can just say, hey, did I answer your question? And that gives them the opportunity to say, well, not really, and then redirect it back to you. So again, ask a redirect question and ask, did I answer your question? Otherwise, just speak to your 3 themes over and over and over and over and over. Don't let them get you off topic. So they said, what's your favorite book? You can say, Moby Dick, because it's basically that effort was a venture capital project. They were going out and trying to find the product to sell into the market, and it was all about leadership. You had a misalignment of agenda. The captain was out after the white whale, and the crew was trying to make some money through this venture capital effort. And once those got misaligned, things went wrong from there. And that reminds me of a situation where when I was in a startup, we had the same situation where the boss wanted to take the company public, but we just wanted to build out the product. Answer it, but then talk about something that's of real interest. Does that make sense? Okay. In the templates which you're going to which will be distributed later. I have some easy questions, some hard questions, and then questions actually that you can ask the employer. Like, so for example, you can ask the employer what their leadership style is, you know, things like that. Again, I'll go over them. You can look at them a little bit later. So that brings us to the job search resources section. You've had a number of seminars about this, no doubt, and you know a lot of these opportunities. What I thought we would do is just have a little exercise about it, and just sort of go through the list. So under, say, general, is there anybody in this room who found a job in a newspaper classified ad? Okay, so that should tell you something. Anyone actually found a job on a website like Monster? So you went to Monster and you found a job?
No, but you're saying successfully landed the job and I'm working there that way, or just found a job and got the interview?
Oh, no. You have to say found a job and got an interview. Yeah. So you went to a Monster or a Dice. Okay, good. So I actually found a job on, God, it was Monster. It's years ago. But yeah, it does happen. Who has gone to a company website and found a job, or at least got an interview? Okay, you have. So only 2? No, I thought it might be a few more. Okay. Like an outplacement service when you've been laid off and gone to a company. Okay, no one? No, okay. Doesn't surprise me. A small headhunter, someone 2 or 3 partners, or just an individual who works from their home. Did anyone find anything through them? Okay, doesn't surprise me. What about a major headhunter, a Korn Ferry? Okay, so you found one.
I was approached by.
Okay, but they approached you.
So, the difference between the last 2, if you don't mind just clarifying.
Well, a small there's lots. Anyone can say I'm a headhunter.
No, major firm headhunter versus corporate recruiter. What are the?
Oh, it's someone from Siemens who contacted you and said, you know.
Like HR of the company.
Yeah, the HR of the company who somehow found out about you and recruited you individually.
So that's like Charterhouse. Major firm headhunter would be like Charterhouse.
Okay.
Yeah, the major firm headhunters, Egon Zehnder, Korn Ferry, Charterhouse. But there are people, you know, sometimes you will hear from corporations who says, you know, I'm from Goldman Sachs and I represent this department, and would you like to come and talk to us?
Because I know what a corporate recruiter is. That has happened.
Yeah.
But I didn't know what
the major and small. Okay.
Yeah, I didn't know what the difference was.
Okay.
I thought, in my mind, it was the same thing. I thought.
Except major firm headhunters only headhunt. Okay. Corporate recruiter is a recruiting department within a global company. Yeah, it's a small point. I'm just trying to get a sense of within the room what's effective for people, so everyone else can see, well, if 7 people found something that way, maybe I should try that. So let's try personal, which I think we're going to get some better results on. Who has actually landed an interview at a networking event? Okay, so you have. Only one? So you've gone to an engineer event or a job fair and you, okay. Okay. What about a work colleague? I would imagine, okay, yeah. Okay, so about half the room has found out something through someone in their company. You said we have an opening in this department, you should apply. Okay, just a general friend, you know, okay, about the same number, okay. They knew you were looking and they gave you a lead, okay. A parent, maybe we're a little old for that. But, you know, some of our parents are executives and, you know, had anything to get us out of the basement, right? And then, yeah, friend of parent or parent of friend. Okay, so a few. Okay, got it. So, you know, it does work. Has anyone been successful at their undergraduate alumni database? I'm not going to ask about Holt because you're going through the process. But so wherever you want undergraduate, have you gone to that database and found jobs? One, just really only one. I'm sorry?
Sorry. Okay, why do you put LinkedIn in here? Is it personal or general, LinkedIn?
Either one, you tell me. I guess general.
Can be colleague, can be friend, can be all.
Yeah, I guess it's a good, you know, it's a good question. Well, yeah, where does LinkedIn fall under this? I would guess, yeah, it would be kind of both. I might Well, what do you think? Who thinks it should be general?
Because if you're looking for a like position which are
So general?
yeah.
Okay, and who thinks personal?
When you connect with friends
Okay.
or work colleagues through LinkedIn, it can be it's
Yeah.
the
At the
channel.
end of the day, you're talking to a friend or colleagues.
Yeah.
It's personal.
But you know, but you make a very, very good point. Okay, well, let me ask the question. Let me ask it this way: who has gone onto LinkedIn, you know, while they were in their job search and dug around among their friends and then reached out to them? Hi, okay, you have. Okay, anyone else? Okay, so you've gone to LinkedIn, knowing you were finding a job. So it's like, okay, oh yeah, here's Robert. He works in finance. I haven't heard from him in 2 or 3 years. Let me send him an email. Okay, no, I have.
But not necessarily a friend. I mean, sometimes I just recently changed job and I've just talked to random people.
Well, no, that's, yeah, yeah. And it goes to your point, or the point I was trying to make, when you reach out to that person, hi, I'm in engineering, or I'm a fellow graduate of HALT, or whatever the connection is, you have to have a very complete profile. Yeah. Because if, what I do is I go and I look at your profile, and if it's not very interesting, I'm not going to connect to you. I'm not going to help to you. Yeah, no, so it's a very good point. In fact, I'm going to revise this slide and add that to this slide. Because again, as I said when I was talking about the last slide, there is a lot of good functionality on LinkedIn. This, as I said, the network find alumni. So you can go to HALT, you can go to years, you can go to industries, and it will tell you everybody from HALT in the last 5 years who work in marketing in the Middle East. And it's all right there, and then you can contact them. Okay, was there another hand? Okay, yep.
Another, I don't know, I mean, just take a group vote, but campus placements will also be probably another.
Yeah, and I assume that HALT, you know that. Magda's done a very good job, no doubt, informing you what your opportunities are here. So.
Undergrad, that was
well, yeah, but for undergrad, I guarantee you all your undergraduate universities have an alumni job database that you can log into and look for jobs. Both my, my graduate and undergraduate programs have places, and I can go and I can look. And that's almost better than LinkedIn, because then you can say, I found your name on the fill-in-the-blank school database, and I see that you have this opportunity, and I'm interested in it. So there's a little bit more of it's a little closer connection. So, so anyone who hasn't gone to their undergraduate university database and looked at the alumni job support and database and listings should certainly do so. That's definitely worth the time. It's definitely worth the time. So I thought I would do one other quick exercise. So who in this room has a friend who has told you about a job opportunity? So a friend of yours is, okay, so two, okay, so look around, okay, so what kind of job does your friend have that he's looking to fill?
No, he works in a different company, but he mentioned it knowing another friend that was looking for I work in engineering,
okay.
So they were looking for a projects director, and they mentioned it to me, so this is how it works in the UAE.
Yeah.
Mainly. This is the main, I would believe that with all of this, there's the number one reason that people get jobs here is through friends.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's what, it is no different in New York. My last, 4 jobs have all been through friends. No, I don't think a headhunter, I can't remember the last time I talked to a headhunter. So that's why I'm asking questions. So who here has a friend with positions that they're trying to fill? Anyone? Who here has a friend who has a position that's open that they're trying to fill? You do? Okay, so what's your friend trying to fill? So I'm trying to network you guys here.
Yeah, actually he's trying to find, let's say, a technical support engineer. But
okay.
He didn't ask me to join, but he asked me if I can refer somebody to join
okay.
for this job.
So technical support engineer. Okay. Who here, some of you are still working, right? So who here at their company is aware of job openings? Job openings at your company. Okay, so what's at your company?
A senior bilingual inspector.
someone who can go out to assess the quality of Arabic as a second language in the school's education system.
Okay. And what do you,
I work
no?
for AT&T, but well, they need some project managers or program managers, but that's in Iraq, so I don't think that anyone is interested. No?
Oh, I don't know. We're throwing it out there. We're throwing it out there. Iraq?
You know, capital.
I bet it's a great expat package.
Well, indeed, but I mean, I don't know about the numbers, but yeah, I think so.
Okay. Opportunity in Iraq?
Because it's very challenging. So.
Yeah, and you do it for a year or two, and someone like AT&T, if you did it for a year or two, they would reward you. The next job would be in Paris, maybe, if you were smart, or back in Dubai. So anyway,
different roles, so
and then the last question is there anybody in the room who personally, in their department at their company, is hiring anybody right now? Oh, okay. So what opportunity do you have for people?
Yes, I'm working for a construction company.
Okay.
My department now is looking for some technical directors.
Okay.
Like this.
Okay, and
actually,
then
my company is hiring a lot of people now.
okay, and your company?
We are working for IT services and consultancy services related to customer service. For my team, I'm hiring a project manager and a services engineer.
Okay.
So I have these positions which has been opened in the company website and getting CVs.
Okay. So the exercise here is just to demonstrate to you all, talk amongst yourself. I mean, you all have lots of friends who have opportunities. There are opportunities in your companies where you're working, and some of you are hiring people. So again, pay attention to who was raising their hands and talk to them, because you make a very good point. In the UAE and New York and everywhere, you hire your friends. Simple as that. All the online LinkedIn hoo-ha, it still comes down to your friends.
I would consider maybe 10%. The 90% is who you know.
Yeah, of course.
And it's big. It's working here. This is what I know. I've been here for a long time in UAE, so
yeah.
I can tell you this is how it works here.
Yeah, well, and again, it's no different in New York. It's no different anywhere else I've heard. The only place it might be different is like a place like maybe Silicon Valley, where they need people with highly specialized technical experience. And it doesn't really matter who you know, it's just, do you have this very specialized technical experience? But that's not our world as MBAs. As MBAs, it's all about who we know and who's in our network. So let's see here. What else do we have? Okay, final thought. A lot of the information that I've discussed today, so the 7 secrets and how to build resumes and the rhetorical rule of 3 and the capitalization rule and so on and so forth, that's all applicable to all your business writing, your business presentations. So your business plans, your PowerPoint presentations at work, your annual reviews, all those tools that I gave you today are just as applicable for that kind of writing as well. So I'll just leave that stand as it is. To the extent that you have friends or colleagues who are looking for a resume coach or looking to have their resume written or mock interviews or whatnot, this is my price list. Yes, sir?
This is the complete resume, right?
Oh, shit, excuse me. Yeah. I will give you an extra 10 minutes. No, and that's amazing.
Wow, this worth more than...
No, you get an extra 10 minutes. Extra 10, thank you. Wow. And the Word should have picked that up. It should have picked that, no, so it's funny, it's, there it is, the first word at the top of the page, and who knows how many times I reviewed it, and it was totally invisible to me, totally invisible, and then it popped out to you.
Because it's a capital letter also.
Yeah, capital letter, yeah. And the other thing too, and this is back to evolution, we are primed to look for problems. We're primed to look for mistakes. If you show people a picture of 100 smiling faces and 1 frowning face, your eyes will immediately go to that frowning face, because we're all descended from people who said, wow, there's a guy in the crowd that has a frowning face, I better get away from that guy. So we look for troubles, we look for exceptions. So, if you have a typo on your document, people will see it. They're programmed to see it. So that was good, because it kept my price list up for longer than I really intended to. This is my favorite poem, and I'm going to read the first stanza, and I'm going to invite people to join me for the rest. So this is by Rudyard Kipling, the British poet. You're all probably familiar with him. If you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat these two impostors just the same, if you can make one heap of all your winnings and risk it on one turn of pitch and toss and lose and start again at your beginnings and never breathe a word about your loss, if you can force your heart and nerve and sinew to serve your turn long after they are gone, and so hold on when there's nothing in you except the will which says to them, hold on. If neither foes nor loving friends can hurt you, if you can fill the 60 seconds worth of distance run, yours is the earth and everything that's in it. And which is more, you'll be a man, my son. So, thank you for your attention. So, again, I can answer any questions now, or again, I'll be right above us in the green and gray area for the rest of the afternoon for quick reviews of your resume. Yes, sir.
After all the session, I feel now I need to rewrite all my CV.
Yeah, that was my call to action. Your resume needs work.
And I don't see much point to show to you my CV right now and to ask for your feedback. So how is it possible if we take some time, if we update our CVs and come back to you?
Well, I go back to New York on Sunday, and I'm at JP Morgan. I work a 12-hour day, so this is what I'm doing for fun. So I still think you should stop by and show me your resume for 10 minutes. We'll walk through it in 10 minutes. If you really feel compelled that you want to work with me for an hour at some point, we can schedule that. I'm not here to sell you anything, but if you really feel that you need that, we could do that. But everyone in this room has the tools. There's nothing that you need from me going forward. You have all the tools you need to write a very competitive resume. To the extent you want me to hold your hand a little bit, I can do it for 10 minutes after this, or we can schedule something when I get back. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Andrew, for this session. About the power words.
Yes.
You said we can download it.
Yeah. This is going to be on the.
I will save the deck, which is the presentation under the announcement, from where you registered. Plus, we attach all the files, which are the resumes examples, and the file with the power words. Yeah. The problem is that when I have done this seminar in the past, I would do the deck, and then I would pass out all the templates. And then when I'd be on the deck, people would be flipping through their templates, and they would get confused. So this time I got very smart, and I said, I'm going to put everything into the deck. The only problem is you can't read it. It's a small problem. So we will receive it from you.
Yeah. It's all right here. The deck will be posted, and the separate PDF files of the templates will be posted. So you'll be able to read the power words, and they're great. So, especially for people with English, their second language, you just pick a power word and you're good to go.
Another question.
Yes.
Andrew, for cover letters.
Yes.
This guy is the best guy on earth for cover letters.
Yep.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to send mine. Well, what did you think of the template?
I couldn't see it from back here, but I
okay.
It was great.
Okay. So it's basically, again, cover letters are simple. Just who I am, who referred me, why I'm good at this job, and I'm going to bother you. I am going to follow up. And then put it into the document, and then cut it and paste it into your email. Don't have an introductory email, then a cover letter. Yeah, just one document. So, again, 10 years from now, cover letters, I think, will be more or less extinct. So, because to your point, we find our jobs through our friends. And our friends don't need a cover letter. But our friends need a nice resume, because our friends are going to take your resume and go to their boss. And if they don't have a nice resume to show to Their boss is like, wait, this is just your friend? He didn't even write a nice, so you have to, your friend is doing you a favor by taking your resume to their boss, so you have to give them something really good to make their job easy. So, in fact, this resume, let me see here, it'll take me a while to get back. My resume, the one I showed you at the beginning, I got the current job at JP Morgan through a friend. She was a former manager. And she took it to her boss. I got hired, but I really wasn't qualified for the job. I say on the top of the page, I was an experienced risk professional. I really wasn't, but I said I was. And all these core competencies I had, and I could speak to, but not quite in the capacity that they were looking for. But I wrote a strong resume. I had a strong friend endorsing me, and I got the job. What she actually made me do, to your point a little bit earlier about the gaps. Remember you asking me about the gaps in the resume? So I had some gaps in my resume. So what I did was put together this page of projects, which filled in the gaps. So I put it separately because some of the projects were 6 months and some were 6, and I have my money management and so forth. So it's just I did this separate page to say, this is what I've been doing between the Great Recession. And I even have here resume writing right there. So anyway, anything else?
Andrew?
Yes.
Please
oh.
go.
I just want to ask, can we have your email address? So that'll be...
Yeah, well, it's on LinkedIn. So I'm LinkedIn, Andrew Kosztyó, I'm there. When you stop by, I'll give it to you, sure, of course. I'll give it to you. But you'll find me, luckily, I am the only Andrew Kosztyó on planet Earth. So if you Google me, you will find me. And it'll be simple as that. Okay. Again, thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you.